My name is Ashfaq Hussein. My teammates are Muhammad, Jaime, Nancy, and Shangyu. We are Team 10, and today we'll be talking to you about a very exciting and interesting topic. It's the revolution in Egypt and its influence on its economic growth. We believe that the Arab Spring in Egypt, or the recent revolution, will bring economic prosperity. Before we start talking, I just want to tell you a little bit or brief summary about the Arab Spring in general. It's basically a revolutionary wave of demonstrations and protests occurring in the Arab countries such as Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. And it started on December 2010 in Tunisia. It ended up overthrowing the president and the president and the prime minister also in Egypt. So in these revolutions, the people have a common say or request, where they are demanding from the corrupted government to leave, like the dictator to step down, and they all have the same common message. So in Egypt, the revolution started for multiple reasons. The first one is dictatorship. President Hosni Mubarak was in power for more than 30 years, where he controlled every single thing in the country. There was no freedom of whatsoever. People were not free. People were not able to do anything in their country. They were not able to vote. There were a lot of constraints. The second thing is government corruption. The officials and government ministers had controlled the sectors, the private and the public sectors of the economy. Businessmen who had a lot of or close ties to the president were benefited from these things. For example, the Minister of Interior in 2010 made $1.8 billion only in 2010, and it's only the Minister of Interior. So how could you explain this to me? And for Hosni Mubarak, he made, his net worth was estimated to be about $70 billion. It's like the second richest man on earth. That's obviously corruption. Unemployment. There is very high unemployment among youth in Egypt, and this was one of the main reasons for this revolution. The last one is extreme poverty. 45% of Egyptians live under the poverty line, and 13 million out of 85 million live in the slums of Cairo. Now we believe that there will be a democratic government in Egypt. Today, Egyptians, or yesterday, they went to the public institutions and started voting. And we believe that there will be a democratic government which will be chosen by the people. This democratic government, or the democratic regime, will bring economic growth through economic freedom. And now Jaime will explain to you what do we mean exactly by the economic freedom.
Thank you, Ashfaq. Hi, everyone. So what is economic freedom? Economic freedom is the right to have equal opportunities based on the competitive market. It's also the right to control one's own labor and property, the right to work, produce, invest, and consume while respecting others' rights, and it should be protected and respected by the state. So what is the relationship between economic freedom and economic growth? Well, more economic freedom leads to more investment, higher per capita income, and higher growth rates. It also strengthens employment growth, it reduces inequalities, rewarding hard work and not government favors, reduces poverty by giving more opportunities to workers and helping them to avoid the poverty trap, enhances entrepreneurial business activity, and it also encourages cooperation, tolerance, and peaceful relations. To measure economic freedom, we need to take into account 10 different components. Every component goes from 0, which means that there is no freedom, to 100, which means that they are completely free. These components are business freedom, trade freedom, fiscal freedom, government spending, monetary freedom, investment freedom, financial freedom, property rights, freedom from corruption, and labor freedom. If we look at the situation of Egypt today, we can see that 4 of these components are under the world average. These components are monetary freedom, prosperity rights, labor freedom, and corruption. That has a score of 28 out of 100. Now Mohammed is going to talk about corruption.
Okay, so the corruption of the government system in Egypt. So the government of Egypt is lacking inclusiveness, that is called equal participation, equal treatment. So in Egypt there is no, strong involvement in politics because Hosni Mubarak is running the government since like 30 years. And there's like one single dominant party rules and run the government, so which means you can't intervene and you can't use your power to join the politics. And so therefore there is no inclusiveness. So when the Egyptian government failed in inclusiveness and the non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations become inactive in developmental and the political activity. So another one is the accountability, like that is called transparency and contestability. So accountability and equality in treatment under law are not aligned to the culture and heritage of the Middle Eastern countries. So Egypt and other such demonstrator countries, remain poor in that regard. And therefore, the society relies on the illegal ways to solve their personal issue by favoring Mubarak's regime. And another one is functioning taxation system. They're also lacking this because so when most of the strong businesses run informally, and they don't pay taxes to the government, and by favoring the Mubarak's regime as well. So when Egypt failed in accountability, and they exist multiples of modes of corruption, such as misuse of public funds and misuse of power, favoritisms, and ascriptions in selecting government leaders. So overall, when Egyptians consolidate democratic reforms in the country, so we believe that democracy will promote and support the institutional framework for fighting corruption. And it will also strengthen and draft a legal framework for criminalization. And the democracy also will expand the scope of international cooperation. And it will also activate and develop the role of media in fighting corruption. And lastly, the democracy will strengthen the coordination and cooperation among federal institutions. Okay, so the corruption, impact of corruption on the economic system of Egypt. So microeconomic inefficiency of investment. So that means corruption reduces both the volume and efficiency of investment. It also reduces the public investment while reducing its productivity. So, but the corruption and classified into two categories in microeconomic inefficiency of investment. First, corruption distorts the sectorial allocation of investable resources. The second one, bribes, increase the cost of production, which gets reflected in a higher output price. So the another one is 45% of population under the poverty line and poor government expenditures on development, infrastructure, health, and education. That means Mubarak's regime is making billions of dollars, and they don't, they don't spend for the countries on health and development, infrastructure, and education. And the youth generation and making a demonstration in the streets, that was the major reason why you're making billions of dollars. Where are these monies go? Your personal checking account. That's what people think. And now Techengi will mention more about economic, situation in Egypt. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mohammed. There was a relative very low level of monetary freedom in Egypt, and the prices was kind of highly distorted in Egypt. Why? Because of the dictatorship government. In the name of reducing inequality, the government spent more than 35% of the total revenue as subsidies to energy and food. And notably, 70% of all the subsidies went to petroleum subsidy. That's kind of crazy, right? But the efficiency is debatable. As can be seen here in this graph on the right, for oil and natural gas, that accounted for the largest part of the domestic consumption in Egypt. Only a very small fraction of the subsidy was spent there. Rather, they went to LPG and diesel oil, where the ordinary people did not benefit that much. And as a result, in this left graph, you can see that the very registered Egyptians, they enjoy most part of the subsidy benefits in Egypt under the dictatorship regime. And at the food subsidy side, which is supposed to help the poor directly, but the situation seems not that way. We can see here more than half of the richest, they were enjoying the food subsidy benefit. And besides, there's a side product of it, that is the black market. The subsidy encouraged black market activity where the subsidized flour was traded in this market, and as a result, the food prices for the poor were not effectively and efficiently lowered as supposed to. So we project that after this Arab Spring, we hope that this new democratic government will be more monitored and transparent and distribute their subsidies more directly to the targeted needs of the poor. And besides, we hope that they will redistribute more subsidies to the education side, which we believe is a key to solve inequality and poverty problem in this country in the long run. And now my colleague Nancy is going to talk more about the economic side.
So we all know that one of the reasons that caused to the revolution is the high unemployment rate. And why the unemployment rate is so high? Because there's not enough private investment to generate sufficient and real jobs in the country. The reasons why the private investment rate is so low is from two parts. One is the restrictions of the law. The other is the poor implementation of the law. And we think that under the freedom economic structure, the two problems can be solved. And we can see some numbers from this slide that according to the World Bank, the ease of doing business index is 18, which is lower than the Middle East and the North Africa region average level, 45. And the informal private business rate is 82%. That is very high. And today we want to talk about two main problems in this country. One is the difficult access to land, and the other is the labor market rigidity. From this slide, we can find that the first, from the left side, the top three is about the restrictions of the law. For example, the public-owned land is very high, and which mismatch the market demand and supply. And even if the investors get the land, if they want to earn the development permit, they need to wait for 3 months, and they need to go through 25 procedures. And besides that, the other part is the corruption, which leads to the poor implementation of the law. And for example, about 1/3 of Egyptians agree that they pay a gift to the civil servants to get the permits. Because of these reasons, which leads to the high cost and the time consuming, and which leads to the informal land market. And the result is that 92% of the people in Egyptians don't have formal title. And we think that the ways to improve these problems is that, first, offering property rights to the Egyptian people, which can lead to Egyptian people to finance their property as the collateral and to increase and attract investment in these countries, and diminishing corruption and improving land plan and management policies. The second problem we want to talk about is about the rigid labor market. Actually, recently, these countries are improving its labor laws for both the employee side and employer side. But the problem is that these laws only work for formal employment contracts, and almost 80% of the new jobs are informal. But the worst is that the poor implementation because of the corruption, which leads to the labor market still very rigid. And we think that under the freedom economic structure, this problem can be solved too.
Thank you.